Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Robert's philosophy, and we're discussing about the chapter, the disease classification psychosis. We have started discussing about this chapter since last 3 days or last 3 sessions. And the psychotic miasm, he has tried to explain it in a simpler manner. First, he has given the introduction regarding the miasm, that how the psychotic miasm is there, how Hahnemann came to the conclusion of chronic gonorrhea leading to constitutional features produces psychotic miasm. And this is Hahnemann's basically discovery that there is chronic gonorrhea. Earlier it was considered to be acute only. Then he has explained about the mental aspects of the psychotic miasm, how these peoples are. These are the most dangerous peoples because those used to produce lot of cruelty in the human nature, human being. They are most liar personalities on this earth. Those are the person on whom you cannot believe and you cannot find it out what is going on in their mind. They are quite suspicious types of people. That's what we have discussed. Then there is a loss of memory, basically fixed ideas. That is another important characteristic. The jealousy is another important thing. Then the criminal aspect, when it is coupled with sora, it produces criminal aspects, and that mental aspects which we have learned about the psychotic miasm. Then he started explaining about some few generals of the remedy. And in the generals, he has explained over there that mm, abnormal discharges ameliorates. So if you get a very right remedy for the internal complaints, the external manifestation comes out is the any abnormal discharge like leukorrhea or nasal discharge, and that discharge is corroding the parts. That is another important thing which we have learned with this miasm. Second important thing that the basically fish brown order of the discharges. That's what characteristic of the psychotic miasm which we have learned. Aggravation by lying down, exactly opposite to the sora. That's what we have discussed. Then amelioration or aggravation at midnight is another characteristic which we have discussed about this miasm. Then it has a tendency to produce a typical alopecia areata, hair falls out in patches in psychotic. In syphilitic, it is in at the multiple levels, it is always in syphilitic. Then we have discussed about this characteristic, the rheumatism, which is important feature of the psychotic miasm. So rheumatism is basically a rheumatoid arthritis or any inflammatory type of variety of arthritis comes under this specific psychotic miasm. Rheumatic heart disease, that is another important feature which we have discussed, and that comes under the psychotic miasm leading towards the syphilitic, ending with the death of the human being. There is a marked dyspnea which develops over there in these people, and that dyspnea is basically because of the obesity is one of the important cause behind that, and patient looks very puffy and greasy, fleshy. That's what we have discussed. So we were there on page number 233. The second last paragraph we have to start with. Frequently, the face becomes bluish and cyanotic, sometimes with venous congestion. The cyanotic condition in this patient is not painful. The anasarcas never become very extensive because this patient die before the anasarca have time to manifest itself to any degree. They snuff out like candle. These conditions are very much aggravated by high living, rich spicy food and spirituous liquor. See, this is very important indication which they have mentioned. That there are pathologies in the kidneys, pathologies in the heart, and because of which anasarca, which is just started of developing, and all of a sudden a patient dies. Why he has died? He has died because the structural damage is already happened, and because of which the symptomatology is not fully developed. The patient died because of it. So renal pathology, the heart pathology, the cyanosis, the venous congestion, the lymphatics getting involved, All those features comes under this specific stigma, and those generally leads to the very early death in those patients without any warning signs. Last sentence was very important. These conditions are very much aggravated by high living, rich spicy food, and spirituous liquors. These are people who have all varieties of addictions and they hide their addiction. That is one important thing. Second important thing, they are always used to consume very spicy diet, and which contains a high rich food content, and because of which obesity is one of the important thing which develops in these people, and they are, because of which secondarily all the systems gets affected. So high food or high living, rich spicy food, and spirituous liquors, the addictions to the alcohol, these are quite common with this miasm, and which are responsible to produce obesity, and obesity ultimately leading with the structural damage and death of these persons early. Meats arouse the latent psychosis as in Sora. The psychotic patient should take meats sparingly, and it is better for him to use more freely of nuts, beans, and cheese. Gouty conditions cannot digest meats. This is very important thing. Meat aggravates, and meat generally produces a gouty rheumatism, because it is protein, and protein digestion, after protein digestion, the excretive product is serum uric acid, which gets deposited on the joints, producing rheumatism, gouty rheumatism, or which can produce a calculi and can develop renal calculi, or can develop sometimes even a gallbladder calculi, and all are those the psychotic conditions. So see, the psychotic conditions which we can very easily evaluate depending upon what patient presents. So rheumatism, the rheumatic heart disease, the asthmas, then gouty concretions, gouty conditions, renal calculi, the gallbladder calculi, all comes under the this specific miasm. He craves beer, and while this is not desirable element in his diet, it causes much less aggravation than do wines. So there is either a craving for wine, or desire for wines, or desire for beer. These are the things which have these habits are there with these peoples. Only thing difference between the syphilitics and psychotic is that psychotic hides their habits. Syphilitic openly explains their habits. These are the two important basic differences. But both of them, both mineral miasms, have the craving for all those things. He is usually aggravated by eating any food. He is usually aggravated by eating any food and ameliorated by lying on stomach and by pressure. So all types of food aggravate the complaints of these patients, and they feel better by lying on abdomen or lying on stomach or by pressure. That is a characteristic modality. So this modality is psychotic modality, aggravation by eating and amelioration by lying on stomach. His taste is musty or fishy. Very important. His taste is musty or fishy. His pains are always colicky in nature, especially in abdomen, and they are ameliorated by bending double and by heart pressure. So you get this specific modality. They feel better by bending double. They are better by keeping or pressing it very hard. A typical colosynth modality. Colosynth is the remedy which is from this same miasm. Colosynth has a very typical close relationship with the staphysagrina. Both of them, their anger with indignation is there with the staphysagrina, which is also there with colosynth. These are the people who suffers from very severe colicky type of pains, and they feel better by bending double and by heart pressure. In fact, we hear of his colleague so frequently that we get tired of his story. There are occasional diarrheas, but always preceded and accompanied by colic, gripping, and tenesmus. Gripping, colicky type of pains during diarrhea, which are the remedy. a gripping pain before, during, and after stool. It is allosocotrina. You get this typical colicky type of pain before, during, and as well as after the stool. So this is gripping colic, which you can get over there. Then the stools are gushing and ejaculated forcibly. Forcible diarrhea. There are two remedies which one must not forget. It's croton tigrinum, where you get this gushing diarrhea, or gambogia. You're going to get this gushing diarrhea with colicky gripping pain over there. The colic and stools of rheum, chamomilla, maccarb are typical of this stigma. So this is again one more thing one should not forget. The rheum, chamomilla, and maccarb are typical of this stigma. The colicky manifestations make the patient irritable. All bowels and intestinal troubles of psychotic origin have the constant symptom of colic, whether it be in the diarrhea, the hemorrhoids, or any other digestive manifestation. And with this, there is always marked irritability. So irritability along with colic, irritability along with hemorrhoids. See, the vascular problems comes under the specific miasm. Hemorrhoids comes under the psychotic miasm. And when it is associated with irritability, it's very specific, the psychotic miasm is there. The colicky pain is a spasm. Colicky pain is always a spasmodic pain. And that spasmodic pain is the characteristic of this psychotic miasm. So, you get a typical diarrheas, the forcible gushing diarrheas in case of psychotic miasm. Second important thing, modality better by bending double or better by hard pressure. That is again with this. The creeping tenesmus before, during, after stools like allosocotrina, you can get over there in this miasm. So you can get the many features in psychotic miasm. You get the hemorrhoids over there, you get the pelvic inflammatory diseases with pain in abdomen over there, then chronic abdomen with those modalities. All those things are very specifically related to the psychotic miasm. The psychotic child is sour smelling in all ways, even stools smell sour. This is very typical of rheum child, a sour smelling child, sour diarrhea, sour smelling perspiration, rheum, and that is psychotic. He wants constant attention and he must be rocked and carried. His colics are ameliorated by lying on abdomen and from hard pressure. So there is a colic better by lying on abdomen and also by hard pressure. Rheum is the child, attention looking child. It is look like to be very close to chamomilla, or it is in between the chamomilla and maccarb. In between state is covered with this rheum child. And they are also the attention seeking children. Dulcamara is typically psychotic in its manifestation, and everyone knows Dulcamara has very typical modality. Dulcamara has damp weather aggravation, rainy season aggravation, damp basements aggravate the complaint. And that's why this modality is very characteristically related with this specific miasm psychotic, and that's why it is there. It has a diarrhea, acrid and corrosive from getting wet. We know that diarrhea because of getting wet, Dulcamara, very important remedy. Bleeding hemorrhoids with great pruritus. Hemorrhoids alternating with skin complaints, hemorrhoids alternating with rheumatism, hemorrhoids associated with great pruritus, skin complaints, are Dulcamara features. Dulcamara, you get very much alternating symptoms. And Dulcamara is a remedy which has action nearly about 20 to 30 days. So it is not acute remedy. This remedy, generally Dulcamara is the remedy. It is subacute to chronic always. And Dulcamara has discharges which smells like fish brine. This is the common in fact odor of the psychotic personality, the fish brine odor of the discharges. Very characteristic. Even in medorinum, you get the similar type of discharge. So this is one important feature one should not forget. So psychotic child typical sour smelling discharge, sour smelling diarrhea, sour smelling perspiration, sour odor of the body, then requires constant attention. There is a colic. Colic is ameliorated by lying on abdomen or pressing hard. Typical children features and psychotic children features are there. Urinary tract has many more symptoms in psychotic miasm. In the urinary tract, there are many symptoms. There is intense pain on urination. Children scream from the pain. You get this feature in lycopodium, you get this feature in sarsaparilla, the screaming during passing the urine. This is due to the spasmodic contraction affecting the urethra. Many diseases of the urinary tract are combined syphilis, sora, and psychosis, with last two most important. The diabetic patient is usually strongly tubercular, but if there is psychotic taint as well, the condition becomes much more malignant. So generally, diabetes is psychotubercular disorder. The miasm is in background with psychotic plus tubercular miasm. The Bright's disease is a manifestation of all three stigmata. Bright's disease is a disease where glomerular nephritis or nephrotic syndrome which develops over there, and all three miasms are lurking behind. It is not purely psychotic. The psychotic plus syphilitic and sora is always in background. So all three miasms comes in this specific disorder. Where we find fibrous changes, we may be sure there is strong psychotic influence. Wherever the fibrosis is there, keep it in your mind, it is always psychotic. In rheumatism, if their fibrosis is much more, it is psychotic. Interstitial lung disease, fibrous condition, always psychosis in background. Stiffness of back, rheumatism affecting the spinal cord. It is producing a fibrous condition, again a psychotic miasm. Keloids, overgrowths, all are related with psychotic miasm. The warts, again a fibrous condition. So these are many more disorders which where the fibrous tendency is there. This is always related with the psychosis. So this is one important thing one should not forget. In the rectum, we find many conditions of the tubercular origin, as strictures, fistulas, sinuses, pockets. But when there is the addition of psychotic stigma, the conditions are greatly aggravated and there is much more tendency towards malignancy. For combinations of tubercular diathesis with psychosis produce cancerous affection. See, multiple pathologies is the characteristic of psychotic miasm. The fistulas, generally, fistulas and strictures, they are not only purely psychotic, it is psychosis associated with syphilis. That's why you get it in acid group, acid fluor, calcarea fluor, silicea, nitric acid. You get these fistulas, tendency toward the fistula, sinuses, pockets. Pockets means pus pocket, the pus which develops over there. So perianal abscesses, where the pus pockets are always develops over there. This is characteristic of the psychotic or psychosyphilitic miasm. If there has to be developed a cancer of a rectum, it is always related with all three miasm. It is not single miasm which gets involved over there in cancer. It is psychosyphilitic plus sora is also in background. And that's why all three combine together to produce a cancerous affection. Cancer of lower bowel or rectum, one of the important remedy one should not forget is always a ruta. And ruta, you get all those features, the psychotic as well as syphilitic. That's why this is a cancer miasmatic remedy, ruta. So you can get all those features in this psychotic miasm, where generally all varieties of pathologies you can find it out in this specific miasm. So we have discussed many more regarding this urinary tract, then related with the rectal complaints and related with the GI tract. All those features in today's sessions with specific desires of this miasm. Tomorrow we'll finish this chapter and we'll complete all the aspects of this miasm in tomorrow's session. So that's all for today. Thank you being there. We'll meet tomorrow at the same time. Good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you.